Welcome in, Carolina Panthers fans. What is going on? You are tuned in to the Two Growls, One Roar podcast. Happy Friday night. It feels like a very busy night for Panthers content creators. So I appreciate you if you are taking a second of your evening to choose to tune in to me. There are a lot of folks and a lot of folks that I work with, a lot of folks I follow who are also doing their live stream right now. So hats off to them. Also, Hill Tough Blog from WFNZ. They are also doing a live show talking about Bill Belichick, introductory press conference. C3 has some stuff going on. Two Fans in the Stands has stuff going on. Robstar has stuff going on. So, man, it's a busy night. And if you don't know any of those names, I recommend looking them up because I'm not greedy. I share and appreciate folks who tune in to me, tune in to other folks. So there you go. We do have a very special guest on the show tonight, and I will show you for just 2 seconds. All the way down here, chilling on the floor. Uh-oh. All right, we're going to get it in a second. There you go. Our dog, Sutton. Sutton, mom is in, my wife and Pearson are out of town, so it's just me and Nolan, and this dog will not leave my side. So she is up here tonight. She crept up the stairs, and I felt bad for leaving her out or potentially leaving her out. So she's going to be in the studio. As always, folks, well, I shouldn't say as always, but if you do listen to the audio version of the podcast, just letting you know that this is the live stream version. So there isn't a different version. We'll get this out tonight. It's been a busy week for us. Very busy week in general. So a lot of stuff going on, but we're here. We made it. We got another game and only 4 games to go in the season. It's already time to start thinking about mock drafts, a whole bunch of other stuff coming down the pipeline. Speaking of which, unrelated to mock drafts, I am in the process, and I posted on X today. We're going to be going through a rebrand of sorts at some point. I feel like folks that tune into YouTube would understand this, but folks and on X, the content that I create stemmed solely from the Panthers since I started this 20-ish months ago, probably 22 months ago now. As I've progressed throughout this year, I decided to, I don't want to say pivot, but expand into college football content. And what a prime opportunity now with Bill Belichick coaching the University of North Carolina for me to continue down the path of talking college football. So with that said, I don't really know how I'm going to rebrand just yet. We'll likely keep the Two Growls, One Roar podcast as like its own thing. But I think in general, as far as YouTube channel, all these other things, we may expand the name, update it into something a little bit different to encompass football in North Carolina and South Carolina, and of course the Carolina Panthers. And to let you know, that's my goal. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but to get things a little bit better, probably have a North Carolina show. There's a lot to talk about in the state of North Carolina. 7 FBS programs. Maybe we'll get into some FCS every now and then. South Carolina, a little bit easier, but a lot of the South Carolina folks are eating up the content when it comes to the Gamecocks, Clemson. So there's a lot to, for me as a content creator, to dive into and expand my knowledge. Am I ready for it? I don't know. But you know what? You learn as you go, and I'd rather learn as I go and grow along with it as we do this. So fun times. I'll get into the chat in just a second. We'll get everything started on previewing the Cowboys. All right. Hopping on over here. Before we get into the preview, actually, let's see if I have this. Hey, there we go. Look at this. I can't take all the credit. This was a pre-made template. Part of it was from Canva. That's where all my stuff is. But I did tweak it. I didn't make this. So here's your week 15. And folks that follow me on X know that this has been the thing that I've done the last 2 years. Every week, of course, it's gotten a little bit later in the week, I tweet out the NFC South matchups and the NFC South standings. It was a fun thing that I would do. I would actually tweet it out, do hashtags, the emojis for the teams. That's a lot. It was a lot to do. This is much easier, and it still gets the job done. So that's what we have. Cowboys, Panthers, of course, 1 o'clock on Fox. Carolina is a 3-point favorite. Sounds like that we're going to have Greg Olsen on the call, much better than Vilma. I'll take that all day. Should be an exciting game. Of course, that's what we're going to preview here. Commanders and Saints. Washington is a 7.5-point favorite. That's a 1 o'clock kickoff on Fox. Then you have Bucks and Chargers. Chargers 3-point favorite, 4:25 on Fox. Falcons versus Raiders. Monday Night Football double header on ESPN. Atlanta currently a 4-point favorite, which they should be because the Raiders are terrible. All right, let's get into the preview because we have a lot to go through. So here we go, folks, getting into the weekly preview. Carolina Panthers, Dallas Cowboys. There's a lot to talk about. We'll take a look at the NFC East standings. Should look pretty familiar. We previewed this last week with with Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles, of course, escaping against the Panthers. Panthers could go 2-2 against the NFC East. I'll take that. Fell short, we know, to the Eagles. Eagles are taking away the division 11-2. Commanders right behind them, should be a playoff team. Cowboys, still some hope, maybe for a wild card spot. They need to win out, so we'll see how that goes. And then the Giants are out of the mix. They're eliminated. Fun fact, I did tweet this. The Panthers right now are the only team with 3 wins or less, and I think there's about 8, that are not eliminated from the playoffs. And that's because the NFC South is terrible. So, yes, the Panthers, through some weird makeup, if they won out at 7-10, could get into the playoffs and host the game. They need a lot of stuff to go their way, so we're not going to talk about that. Speaking of NFC South standings, Tampa Bay Buccaneers 7-6 lead the division. Stinks, man. I talk about it. I've talked about it the last few weeks. You think about a few of these games, if they fell in the Panthers' lap, you could be talking about Panthers at 6-7, 1 game out, or technically Tampa would have had a loss. They could be tied. Could have a 3-way tie at the top of the division right now at 6-7. Saints are right there in the mix as well. But Falcons 6-7, Saints 5-8, Panthers 3-10. This season, it feels much different than last year closing out. I think last year I was like, can we just get this thing over? We're starting to see signs of life. It's a promising future for the Panthers, and I think a lot of that has to do with Bryce Young. A lot of it has to do with Dave Canales. Sure, there's been a lot of bumps along the way, but for me personally, it feels better heading into the offseason, and it's like, okay, I want to see them win a few more games. I know they've won 3 up until this point, but the remaining schedule, which, speaking of schedule, let's get to it. The remaining schedule for the Panthers is manageable. Cowboys, winnable game. Arizona Cardinals, winnable game. Tampa Bay, we know how close that game was. Chance to win there. And the Atlanta Falcons, who may or may not be playing for a playoff spot, but I like the Panthers' chance there. So closing it out, I mean, if the Panthers got to 7 wins, that would be their best record since the Steve Wilkes year. So you got that going for you. The Dallas Cowboys, we're almost on a 3-game winning streak. We saw, or maybe you saw, the Monday Night Football fiasco, if you want to call it that. Fake, not blocked, block, punt, and then they just let Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow do their thing. But the Bengals escaped. However, talking a lot about the Panthers and the Panthers being favored, Dallas Cowboys have played decent football. I mean, knocking off Washington, not an easy task. Giants are terrible. So Yeah, that makes sense. And like we said, a very close game against the Cincinnati Bengals. They will then face Tampa Bay, the Eagles, and Commanders. So tough little stretch for them again if they try to possibly get into the playoffs at 9-8. All right. Well, this is not. I'm gonna have to blow this up for myself so I can actually read this. So I'll get back into it in a second. I did want to put up a few NFL Pro. I don't know how many people subscribe to NFL Plus or NFL Plus Pro. A lot of good stuff on there as far as film breakdowns. I mean, you can go and watch almost any clip that you want. So it's nice if you're into that stuff. But they did put a few insights on here. I'm not going to read through each like in detail on these, but I wanted to highlight a few. Cowboys offense has used the spread formation on a league high 38.6% of their offensive plays this season. That is the highest rate in the NFL. Bryce Young, we talked about him. We've seen the blitz. Teams continue to blitz against him, thinking that he's going to settle into his old ways of earlier this year or last season, but it's not happening. He's making plays. Bryce Young has been blitzed on 37% of his dropbacks since returning to the lineup in week 8. That's the highest rate in the NFL, but he still continued to find success. And one of the things that I liked listening to Dave Canales this week, it was in the Panthers huddle, and I don't know how many people listen to the Panthers huddle, but there was a clip, and I can't even remember the host's name, but they asked about Bryce Young and Dave Canales in the offense, and they asked Dave, going back on the Eagles game, like what was the perfect marriage of play calling and execution by Bryce Young? And Dave Canales pointed to the pass to Xavier Legette at the end of the game. Of course, we know it was a drop, but they did point to that, and he said that was it. That was him reading the defense, executing, and like I think we'll continue to see that, even if Dave Canales is not going to commit to Bryce Young and still going to kind of leave things the way they are. Cowboys defense used their base defense on only 11.4% of the plays in week. I don't know why that is a stat. Okay, this is a week 8, and it gives you a weekly breakdown. I was like, what are we doing here? Bryce Young has averaged the third most. This is when I tweeted out third most yards per attempt, 7.9 yards, and has converted a first down on 35.1% of his pressure dropbacks since reclaiming the starting quarterback job in week 8. That's the second highest rate in the NFL during that span. Really good stuff from Bryce Young. And for those that may have doubted, still doubt, he continues to deliver every week and against really good teams. We'll look at a few more. Rico Dowdle at 51.4% and Chuba Hubbard at 49% have recorded the highest and second highest rushing success rates, respectively, in the second half of games this season among running backs with at least 50 carries. Good news there. We know Dowdle's actually had back-to-back 100-yard games. He had a really good game against the Cincinnati Bengals, going back and looking at some of his stat lines. Feels like every week Panthers going up against a good running back or an okay running back. He has a chance to take advantage of a defense that just hasn't been good against the run. Clowney has generated a team-high 28 pressures and 11.8% pressure rate this season, highest among any Panthers defender. So Clowney may not be getting all the sacks that we want, but his impact is definitely being made. CeeDee Lamb's been targeted on 33% of his routes against single high safeties, the third highest rate among receivers with 150 routes. And then the last one, Panthers offense allowed rushers to be contacted behind the line of scrimmage on 33% of their design runs prior to week 11. That is the lowest rate in the NFL. That's really good. Good stats. All right, let me personally back out of this for a second, and we'll get a preview of the Dallas offense and the Carolina offense going up against each other. in just a second. All right. So taking a look, and actually, I'll hop back in if there are comments. I'll catch up at the end. Dallas offense versus the Carolina defense. Dallas, 20.6 points per game, 21st in the NFL. Panthers are still last, giving up 29.8. Numbers slowly coming down. Still last in the league. Yards per game for Dallas, 322.6, which is 20th. Panthers are giving up 384 yards, which is 31st in the NFL. Yards per play, 5 for the Cowboys offense compared to 5.8 for the Panthers defense. Third down efficiency, 35% for Dallas. Now the Panthers are last in the NFL at 47%. And I think it was over 50% for the Eagles last week. Just not good. Not a good team on third down. You got to be able to get off the field. But I think part of the reason you're not able to get off the field is you can't stop the run. You give up big run chunk plays on first or second down or manageable third downs. That's what happens. Fourth down percentage, 34%. They're 31st in the NFL, and we are 10th, 54% on defense. Red zone scoring, they are 31st in the NFL when it comes to scoring a touchdown in the red zone at only 44% of the time. Panthers, on the other hand, 63%, which ranks 26th. Panthers offense slowly improving. You think back to last year when we were talking about one of the worst offenses in Panthers history in terms of points per game, a little over 13. They're almost at 18 points. So we'll take anything and everything, especially considering some of the ups and downs with the receiving core. I mean, you look at the rotation that's been out there, the guys that have missed time. You have to feel pretty good about what Bryce Young is being able to do. It doesn't, and the drops, but it doesn't change next season in the offseason and us thinking about getting a number one receiver. Still think that's on the books. 17.9 points per game, but guess what? Dallas is right there behind us, giving up 28. So it's a bad defense. 31st in the NFL. We are 30th with 293 yards on offense. They are 26, giving up 365. We average 5 yards per play, which ranks 26, and they give up 5.9, which is actually worse than us, 29th in the NFL. Third down conversions were not much better than them at 35%, although it's much better than earlier in the season when it was like we could not convert a third down to save our life. They actually have the fifth best third down defense in the NFL, 34%. Fourth down conversion rate, Panthers sit at 40%, which is 27th. It's something to talk about with Eddie having a few misses and with us being able to play with house money. You would expect Dave Canales to have the chance to roll the dice a few more times, especially as we get closer. Go ahead, go for it on fourth down. So something to look at this week. They are 23rd in the NFL at 66%. Panthers red zone scoring at one point was like top 6 as far as scoring touchdowns in the red zone. It's come back down to 15. We've seen the struggles in the last 2 or 3 weeks, not so much last week, but the weeks prior at Tampa, Kansas City. 56%, that's 15th, and they have the worst red zone defense in the NFL right now. So a lot of good things for the Panthers to lean into here, and that is 74%. Let's take a look at the splits between rushing and passing. We'll start with the Dallas rushing attack. So they average about 35% run compared to 64% pass. So not very balanced at all. I mean, we look at the breakdown, that's 29th in run, 4th in passing as far as attempts per game. Yards per rush, they're averaging 4 and about 91 yards per game, which ranks 28th. But you look on the flip side, we have the worst rushing defense in the NFL. And that number on the right, I feel like teams are hitting close to 200 yards per game now. It's just becoming easy and easier. But 170 yards per game on the defensive side of the ball, not great. 5 yards per rush. And teams just, they know what to do. Although some teams, it feels like they forget. and then they settle in and realize they can run the ball and then kind of get things going. But that's what you look for. Passing percentage or completion percentage wise, this is overall 62%. Opponents, we are giving up about or averaging 68%, which is 26th. Yards per pass, 6.3. We allow 7.4. Passing yards for a game, 231. Excuse me, I said 20. Not that. For the Dallas Cowboys. Panthers offense, 41% run to 58% pass. Still one of the top pass-heavy teams in the NFL. I think as we continue to talk about this balanced or run-heavy team, unfortunately, without Jonathan Brooks and what we thought the 1-2 punch was going to be, it seems that it may stay this way. And we'll see this week. It sounds like Mike Boone potentially getting the nod. No, Raheem Blackshear, hopefully. We got the injury report at the end, I believe, is questionable right now, but we'll see. 4.4 yards per carry is 14th. They are, they might not be as bad as us, but they still have a bad rushing defense as well, 4.8, and they're giving up 141, which is 30th, and we average 106 yards per game. The passing attack, we talked about the percentage of passes. Completion percentage is 61%. Yards per pass is 6, although we just saw the improvements from Bryce Young over the last few games since coming off of the bye. Really good stuff. And close to last at 186 passing yards per game, but we have seen that number continue to rise. All right, we're going to be seeing the wonderful Cooper Rush. He's 128 for 216 on the season, 59.3% completion percentage, almost 1,200 passing yards, 5.5 yards per attempt, 7 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, and has been sacked 10 times with a 79.5 passer rating. Rushing attack for the Cowboys, I talked about Rico Dowdle. 152 attempts, 731 yards, 4.8 yards per carry, 1 touchdown on the season. Like I said, the last 2 weeks, over 100 yards. Really good stuff from him. Close to 150 against the Bengals. Ezekiel Elliott, 61 attempts, 193 yards, 3.2. Whatever that is, Andrew, was like, it seems it's run its course, and they're going to continue to feed Dowdle. We know about the talented CeeDee Lamb, 85 receptions, leads the team, 973 yards. I mean, he is the primary target, 5 touchdowns, 11.4 per reception. It'll be interesting to see the status of J.C. Horn this week, also questionable. Jake Ferguson right behind him at 46, 401. Jalen Tolbert, 39, 451. Dowdle also getting involved in the passing game, 33 catches, 205 yards, 3 touchdowns. I'm not going to go through the entire list, but you see Turpin, Schoonmaker, and Cooks. Bryce Young, 158 for 268, 59% completion percentage. You'd still love to see that increase, but I think even with it being where it is, we're seeing smarter decisions. We're seeing him use his feet, making good throws when throwing the ball away and not forcing things. I know he had I'll call it a bad-ish interception, but there's a lot of improvement. 5.9 per attempt, 7 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, only sacked 15 times. I mean, you look at and throw in Andy's number, 22 sacks on the year by this offensive line, night and day from last year. And I would recommend going out and looking at CJ Stroud's numbers, looking at Caleb Williams' numbers. They may break or go over the number that Bryce had last year of 62. Big improvements, and that can't be talked about enough. And a 73.5 passer rating for Bryce Young. Rushing attack, we know what we got. It's Chuba Hubbard. Hats off to Chuba Hubbard. 1,000 rushing yards. First time in his career he got over the hump. It's a career year, man. I mean, he's on pace now for 1,300. I talk about it like it sucks. that the team just doesn't have more wins to go along with the success that he's had. But hey, he's the future. 4.7 per attempt, 8 touchdowns. If we're being honest, when we evaluate Jonathan Brooks, I would not imagine that he's able to play a snap next year. I mean, he got injured in November, had surgery, just now worked his way back. He's injured in December. It's the end of the year. I mean, maybe if they got into the playoffs, but unfortunately, it seems like a lost year. And so I don't know what the offseason holds. It's hard to imagine that they would draft another running back. So I think this is a prime opportunity for Mike Boone or Raheem Blackshear, whoever's available, to get some snaps, get some reps, and take over. We're going to need a backup. We're going to need a backup to Chuba Hubbard to give him a little bit of a rest. So there you go. And I think NFL Canada tweeted out he is the second running back from Canada to rush for 1,000 yards in the season. So kudos to him. And I mean, I guess we can talk a little. Bryce Young, 28 for 137, 4.9 per attempt, 2 touchdowns. Not bad. Panthers receiving core led by Xavier Legette, 39 receptions, 432 yards, 4 touchdowns. He started off hot in the red zone, scored a lot early. Got to see Dollar Bill. Things have kind of fallen off. And I mean, I will tell you, if you're a Panthers fan, I understand possibly the frustration that you have. But I was listening to and I said this earlier, I don't know how many people listened to the episode. I was listening to the fine folks on WFNZ. They had Dal Loggins on, App State coach. He was the OC at University of South Carolina who coached Xavier Legette. Talked about how hard he works, how he's going to figure this thing out. He's going to put in the time. And I agree. I know that's been kind of a hot topic. I think it's okay for Xavier to develop the way that he develops and for the Panthers to still want a true X, a true number one, and then he can grow alongside them and, hey, continue to shine. But still, production-wise, this is not the same as Jonathan Mingo. The drops are frustrating, but he's gotten to the end zone. And if you compare him head-to-head, speaking of Jonathan Mingo, this is, what are we going to call this? The Mingo revenge. I think that's so overused, but we will get Mingo back. Mingo has done nothing for the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, he has fallen off the face of the earth. Panthers look smarter and smarter and smarter. And Dan Morgan, every single day with this trade, in the same way that they did with Deontay Johnson. I don't know how we got what we got for Mingo, but we'll take it. Not saying I don't want Mingo to be successful, but this is not the same. And Xavier Legette is going to find it. He's going to figure it out. But at the same time, it's okay to, hey, want someone else to come in. Chuba Hubbard is actually second in receptions with 35, 141 yards, the 1 touchdown. Jatavian Sanders, glad to have him back. Glad that he is healthy at 29 receptions, 302 yards, 1 touchdown. Adam Thielen, man, age is just a number for him because he has it every single week. 28 receptions, 367 yards, 13.1 per catch, 2 touchdowns. Lastly, you have David Moore. I didn't do the full list, but top receivers, 26, 267. David Moore's a free agent. I think he's got to be – you got to bring him back. I think you could make a strong case for Tommy Tremble. And, you know, he's had his ups and downs as well. Tommy Tremble's a free agent. I'd love to have him back here. Same thing with David Moore. That doesn't mean that you still don't look at another free agent tight end. Or, I know defense is a need. There's some good tight ends in this year's draft that, hey, wouldn't be bad to have another pass catcher. On the defensive side of the ball, Xavier Woods leading the way with 89 tackles. Josie Jewell right behind him with 81, 3.5 sacks. Ashawn Robinson, and we'll have a slide with the sacks in a minute, but leads the team in sacks, has 64 tackles, really good year. Trevin Wallace, who's going to be out, 64. J.C. Horn with 62, and then a Mike Jackson. Mike Jackson's another one. I know he's also had some blunders, but considering the trade that we had to get him, I think Mike Jackson's another guy that you want to bring back next year as you're building out this team. Eric Kendricks is a beast, 119 tackles, 3 sacks, 3 fumbles. DeMarvion Overshawn, 90 tackles on the year, 5 sacks. Donovan Wilson, 69, 2.5. Malik Hooker, 61. Jordan Lewis with 52 and Trayvon Diggs with 42. I didn't even get Parsons in there. Like I said, sack leader, Ashawn Robinson, 4.5. Josie Jewell, 3.5. Clowney with 3.5. DJ Wonham, 3. I think DJ Wonham's presence, it's making a big impact. Amari Barno as well. Are starting to see pressure on quarterbacks. It's not something we had earlier in the season, but it is helping us down the stretch. Trevin with 1, JC with 1. There's Michael Parsons, 6.5 sacks, 28. He's going to be lined up a lot on the right, would be my guess, which means he, of course, is going to be going against Ike Ekwonu. We saw this last year. And, the game last year with the Cowboys, it was a little bit closer than people may or not remember. I'm not saying that it was close, but the Panthers competed. I like the Panthers this week, but it does worry me a little bit that they are considered the favorite. But DeMario Overshawn, 5, Kendricks, 3, Osa with 3, Lawrence with 3, Donovan Wilson, 2.5. Interceptions, Woods, 3, Smith, Jackson, Horn, Jewell with 1 interception, Malik Hooker, 2, Diggs, 2, Overshawn, 1, Golston, Kendricks, and Mook Uama, 1. All right, we talked about the injury report. Injury report for the Carolina Panthers. Trevin Wallace officially out. Claudin Cherylus will be starting in his place. Jadeveon Clowney, questionable. Raheem Blackshear, questionable. Josie Jewell, questionable, although I'd expect him to play. J.C. Horn, questionable as well. And I think he's probably, out of this group, the one that I'm most concerned about. And it's not really concerned about this game. It's just the injury history. It's something that's going to hover. I know I've talked about extending him. He's had a fantastic year. If he needs to sit this game, then he sits because, it is unfortunately meaningless football. I just want to keep him healthy going into the 5th-year option next year. Let him play that out and then make a decision if you want to extend him at that point or use the franchise tag. That's my thought. Quite a few guys out for the Dallas Cowboys. A few of these guys we talked about a minute ago, some of the starters. Now, we didn't talk about offensive line, but Cooper Beebe is out, starting center. Eric Kendricks is questionable, although I expect him to play. DeMarvion Overshawn, linebacker, is out. Juwane Thomas, defensive back, is out as well. They have quite a few guys that are questionable on the list. CeeDee Lamb listed as unspecified, so I don't know what that means. Deron Bland, remember he had a really good run there last year. Quite a few guys listed now as unspecified, but it's late in the season. A lot of stuff going on. Talking about the Panthers offense, starting offense with Xavier Legette getting a nod. Sounds like Jalen Coker is going to be back. That's positive news. Good for Bryce Young. Good for Coker, too. Ike Ekwonu, Damian Lewis, Cade Mays, Robert Hunt, Taylor Moton. That's your core. Tommy Trimble and Jatavian Sanders. Felipe Franks as your rotational backup. Adam Thielen. It's funny. The Panthers still have not, Panthers.com has still not updated this to put Bryce Young as QB1. But they still make up these other adjustments. I'm like, y'all are weird. Whatever. Cuba Hubbard and Raheem Blackshear, although we've talked about Mike Boone is probably the guy that's going to get the look off the practice squad call up. They also brought in Velus Jones Jr. So you see him. I don't know how much we'll actually see him. Probably more in the return game. And Devin Tompkins as well, who's been up and down, but recently up. David Moore. All right. On the defensive side of the ball, LeBrian Ray, Shai Tuttle, Ashawn Robinson, Clowney. We talked about Claudin Cherylus and John Radigan, a name I didn't mention, also likely going to get some snaps at the linebacker position. Josie Jewell, DJ Wonham. I'm curious to see if Horn cannot go, if they start Dane Jackson, Caleb Farley. If I know Shaw Smith Wade has really been kind of the nickel, so I don't know if they'd move him into that position. They could rotate, put Mike Jackson as the strong side, whatever with where JC was, then put Shaw into that position. But I'm curious. Xavier Woods, Jordan Fuller, rounding out your list there. All right, man. There was some unfortunate news today. I don't think it was surprising. I just say it was unfortunate for the former safety drafted out of Florida State, Jamie Robinson. 2023 draft class for the Carolina Panthers, man. It's rough. You have Bryce Young, Chandler Zavala, and DJ Johnson as the three picks that are here. Jonathan Mingo traded, now Jamie Robinson cut. This was not a surprise. We saw Jamie Robinson scratched, healthy for quite a few weeks, and I don't know how many people pay attention to the list of guys that are scratches. I also don't know how many people, I don't know how many people know that you can't take your full 53 with you. So that's why every week you see your list of inactives. And in some cases, it may be a starter that's hurt, you're going to scratch, or that's not on IR. In other cases, you have a guy that's healthy and he continues to be a scratch. Then things just kind of start adding up and you say, oh, okay, I understand this is not going to work. But we saw Robinson as a scratch last year. Remember, Evero has been here. And this year, it's unfortunate though. So he's gone. They did activate safety Nick Scott from IR, and they did bring back Deshaun Williams, who was cut earlier in the week. And as I mentioned, lots of movement. Signed wide receiver Velus Jones Jr. from the practice squad, from the Jags practice squad. Signed defensive tackle Sam Roberts from the practice squad. Jonathan Brooks is officially on IR. Talked about Williams. They signed Trenton Irwin to the practice squad and released Dax Milne. Busy time of year, man. Every week. All right, so the Panthers are 3-point favorites. You go back and look, they opened up as a 1.5-point favorite. Over under at 43.5 points. Dallas is 5-8. Carolina is 3-10. However, ESPN's matchup predictor is favoring Dallas slightly. And I put this on here every week. This has been very skewed over the last 2 or 3 weeks in favor of Tampa, in favor of Kansas City, in favor of the Philadelphia Eagles. It was like an 80-20 almost. The Panthers are favored, man. And I don't know how to feel about it. It's been a lot of talk. I think it shows a sign of respect for the performance that we've seen. But I am worried that the Panthers may kind of lean into this a little too much. Kind of be out over their skis. And I don't know how much they listen to this stuff on the outside. I know Canales was asked about it in the presser this week. Is like the first time the Panthers have been favored since 2022. He even acknowledged that he likes to stay away from that, but also knows that Vegas is pretty smart. They know their stuff. So I'm worried. I don't know how you could call this a trap game because the Panthers are bad and it's not like they're looking ahead, but I could see the Panthers being a little bit like overconfident. You do look at Dallas, who without the flub against the Bengals could have won 3 in a row. So, they're on the positive side of what the Panthers have not been over the last 3 weeks, getting into the win column. There's still something to play for, talking about the outside odds to get in. But at the end of the day, this is a culture-defining game for the Panthers, a game that the Panthers should win. And if you're Dave Canales, you're leading this team. You've seen them go against really good teams the last 3 weeks, come up short in various ways. This one you don't want to leave any doubt. And I don't say that I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout, but I think knowing that, throwing the records aside, that you are the better team, that everyone views you as the better team, that people can see the progress and the development, you need to be able to take that momentum, because eventually, knock on wood, hopefully, this is a common theme. And so you got to learn how to win. I know Dan Campbell and talks about not wanting to be favored and, playing as the underdog with Detroit. But eventually you're going to be the favorite. And if you're winning, and if you're winning a lot of football games. So I look at this as a building block, and just get over the finish line. Get to 4. A lot of folks, we talked about that 4 to 6 win range. I know the 5.5 was what Vegas set. It'd be great. And it'd be good to continue to see Bryce Young take advantage of a bad defense, see how we can hold up against their defensive front, and get into the win column, which would be good news, man. Closing out the year, feeling good. So for me, as much as I don't want, I shy away, man. I'm not dumb. I know when I should pick the Panthers, when I shouldn't. I don't bet. This is not betting advice. But for me, I do think it's probably going to be a curse. I am going to take the Panthers this week. I feel like they are going to get over the hump. I do have concerns, like I said. Like, are they gonna be awake? Are they going to come out of sleep, knowing that, hey, people think a lot about them? Let's see. Over under is 43, and I can't do math very well in my head, but let's take Panthers 28, Cowboys 20 for your final score. So that is the over. I can add that up. That's 48 points. But I like it. I like the Panthers this week. Should be fun. All right, let me close this out on my side. From here, yeah, man, I think that's going to do it for today's show. And unless anyone has anything, what I will say is, if you are watching on any other platform, X, Facebook, please come over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button. It's much appreciated. Helps me out, helps the show grow, and it's free. But until next time, it's Carolina Dad. Y'all have a good one.